Okay, so we've got the shell of the building starting to come together, and once I've got the windows in there, it should look pretty close, or close enough for our purposes to the building we're trying to make, which obviously is this one here. There we are. So zooming out, we can see there, maybe if we get time we can do a bit of modelling on the parapet as well, and then it will really look almost exactly like that exterior. But we're obviously using this for an interior design project, so the interior is far more important. And so we're going to get some views now so that we can start to look at that interior and model some things there and see them as they're being created. So the first thing is very simple, making a camera view. I'm sure you've done this hundreds of times. I'm just going to use the quick option there on the quick access toolbar and go to camera. And maybe just remind you of a couple of things when you're placing your cameras. Try to get a little bit away from things like walls and other things that might block your camera view, because it's actually possible to have a camera inside a wall and still see things in a perspective in shaded mode, but then they won't come up when you render. So just try and steer clear of walls, and it's easy when you manipulate the camera to accidentally move it back into a wall as well, so just a little bit away from the walls. And then when you place your targets, again, try to keep them a fair distance from your camera, because if you place them too closely, it'll crop out things that are a fair distance from that target. So basically double the distance that I have from the camera to the target there is the point that it'll start cropping. So if I place the target there, it will probably crop out from about here. So I miss that back wall. So just think of a target as a way of setting the direction, but also you've got to remember that when you orbit the view, it's going to orbit around the target. So the target placement does matter, but again, just try and keep it a fair distance from the camera and it'll make it easier to set up your views. At first you probably won't be doing a lot of adjustments anyway. So I've got a perspective, and if you don't know, with 2016, if you'd say use 2015 a lot, and maybe you haven't looked at some of the new options with 2016, one of the best new options is the ability to move things, which I'm doing there by dragging. Sometimes it won't work, so there it's giving me an error because it's got an angle, but let's have a look at maybe this wall over here. So see how easy it is to move things? And that's a new feature in 2016. Previously you couldn't move and copy things so easily in perspective. So maybe just to make that a bit clearer, I'll put in a just a simple family. I'll just put in something like a desk or two. And then, so you remember your perspective views or camera views always have names initially, like 3D view 1, 3D view 2. So there's my 3D view or perspective view, and I'm going to select this desk, and you can see again it should be fairly easy to move that just by dragging. So that's a really useful new feature in Revit 2016. And you can also copy by using the control option. So you can't click the copy button, but if you hold down control, when you drag, you can copy. Okay, so I also want an axonometric view, or isometric, but really it is an axonometric if you change the angle. And so remember, that's the view you get when you click on the house and make this one, it's called your default 3D view, the 3D in brackets, which remember is not in perspective. So I want to have a view that's like this, but showing the interior. So always remember, you can make as many of these views as you like by either duplicating that original view or giving a new name. I'm simply going to go to duplicate. So make sure you're aware of that 3D in parentheses is a non-perspective or an axonometric view. And when you right click on that, you can go to duplicate view, duplicate, and now you can see I've got 3D in brackets copy 1. And I'm going to right click on that new view name and go to rename. And I'm going to call it SB 1. SB standing for section box. Okay, so if you don't immediately know what that tool is, like I said, you're not using one of the most useful tools in the program. So something that a lot of other BIM programs don't actually have, which I think is a real problem with those programs. One of the most useful things in Revit. So again, in this section box or SB1 view that I've created, I'm going to make sure I can get to view properties. So do you know how to get to view properties, firstly? No, you don't even need to do that. Yeah, view properties. Okay, so when you select something, say if you select a wall, then you'll see the properties in your properties palette, and you can see there, it's showing me the properties for this wall I've selected, basic wall, existing 540mm wall. If I select this object, then I can see the properties for that roof. If there's nothing selected, then you'll see the properties for your view. Oh yeah, so you should always have that properties panel open. Yeah, if you don't have it, you can go into manage and then go in that way, but it's probably easier just to turn your properties palette on. So, okay, so you should always have that properties panel there. If there's something selected, you can still go to your view properties by clicking on this option here. And it's one of those things that is meant to be one of the core elements in Revit. It's just that the developers think it's so obvious and that people would be accessing that so often that you don't even notice it. They've made it so simple and so easy that it's easy to miss that. So make sure you realise that you have view properties there, and the easiest way to get to it is just to make sure there's nothing selected. Pressing escape until that happens is probably the easiest way to do that. And so I've got a 3D view open. If I go to a perspective view, you can see that's also a 3D view, so it'll say the same thing in properties. But notice the properties that are available change a little bit. So here it begins with detail level, and then you have parts visibility, visibility graphics. If I go to SB1, it begins with a scale. So scale is an option you don't have in perspective views, obviously. Alright, so then once you've got that 3D view open, mine again is called SB1, then you can scroll down in the view properties and you'll find section box. So there's a tick box next to it. So it's in the extents area, extents section. This is extents, and there's section box. So I'm simply going to tick that option, and you'll see then it gives you this box around whatever's been modelled. And you can use that if you select it by dragging on the arrows that come up on each side. I'm just going to drag this down, and you can see it's cutting away whatever's outside the box. So you can see how useful that is for getting interior views. So if I go down to here, and I can also use it to bring back and maybe cut away that front wall if I wanted to. So if you want to show cutaway floor plans, that is probably the easiest way. You don't even have to have the parts that are being cut showing red. That's just the way it's set up at the moment. Okay, so really useful, especially for people who have trouble reading plans, and a lot of clients do. You can use these cutaway isometric or axonometric views, and that'll be really useful when I start doing some modelling, which I'm going to do just in a moment. So I've got that view set up with the things cut away that I want, and so now I want to hide that section box. And it's just like anything else in Revit. You can select it, right click, and then go to hide in view elements. Now if you want to bring it back, again, just like anything you hide in Revit, you can click on the light bulb at the bottom, and that will toggle the visibility to show you anything that's hidden. And you can even work on it in this hidden mode. So if I select the section box there, in this it's called reveal mode, I can adjust that. Maybe if I want to see the wall there, I can easily bring that in. But I don't mind having it just cut away. Okay, so another option, don't forget you can always hide things. So I've cut just part of that wall away, and instead of using the section box, I could always just select it and hide it just like anything else, hide elements. So you can use the two together, hide and section box. And that way I know I can see the floor all the way to the edge there. Right, so the same with the floor above, for example. So there's my floor. And again, I can hide that instead of using the section box to take it away. And I can tell it's hidden because it's gone that magenta colour, which when you're in this reveal mode means it's a hidden object. If I click on the light bulb, now it'll go back to showing me normal display with those objects being hidden. I've got a desk up there, I'll delete that. So the main thing I want to show you though is modelling. And so we've done a bit of that already, but I just want to go a bit further into that. And so get rid of these desks and we'll model in some things that we're actually going to use in the space. So I'm just going to start with, well, I'm sure the one you've used quite a lot already, Extrusion, but then sort of make sure you have an idea about the other main modelling tools and why in some cases it's good to use model in place, and then other times better to use these in another file. So again, on your architecture tab you have under component the option to go to model in place. And do you know which categories to use here? Which categories? Sorry? Yeah, do you know it's good if you're not sure? Casework's another good one for a lot of the things you'd be working on. So that's for built-in furniture essentially, joinery mostly. So there is a furniture category, but that's really useful for furniture that isn't built in. So I'm going to use casework this time. And I'll call it joinery unit. Alright, so I'll make a fairly simple set of objects, and I'm going to start with a, well again, extrusion, probably don't need to do too much with that, you're probably pretty used to it by now. Working in a plan view, I probably don't even need to show you that. So instead I'll go to my view that I've made with the section box and we'll look at doing extrusions in a different plane. I know I've done a little bit of that, just want to make sure you've got a good idea of it. So if I wanted to make something that is sitting on this wall surface over here and coming out from the wall, would you know how to do that? Okay, so you know when you click on extrusion, where is the extrusion going to be placed? Where is it starting from? Maybe sort of out. Okay, so if you click on the extrusion button, how can you even tell? By looking on the screen there, there's a way you can tell where that extrusion is being generated, or the plane used to place the profile. Okay, so if you ever want to find these things, properties should be the first place that you'd be looking. So in properties over here, notice how it says work plane and the level's ground floor. So that is the plane that's being used to place the profile. That is the basis for the extrusion. So maybe I just will do one on the ground plane. So even though I'm in a 3D view, it's defaulting to the ground floor plane. So I'll just maybe do a circle so you can see there's something coming up from the ground We've got a height over here of 2100. Let's make that a bit less, 500. Tick to finish. And there we are. So what if I want to come out from the wall here? Well, back to create, and I'll go to make extrusion again. And then notice you have this button on the ribbon called set. So that lets you choose a different plane. So people at first think that extrusions are always coming up from the ground and you're just setting a height working from that work plane. But the idea with an extrusion is that it's based on a profile that can be extruded in any direction. And so when you choose the set option, you've got two choices essentially. Don't worry about the third option there. Your main options are either to choose a level, so you can change it to any other level that you've created if you want to work on a different story, or you can choose pick a plane. So with pick a plane you can choose any surface. So this opens up a lot of possibilities when you're modelling. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to choose this wall surface over here. So now I'll make another circle, and I know exactly where that's going to go. It might not be obvious, but I know it's going to sit exactly on that wall surface. I'll change the height, maybe make it a bit less. Tick to finish, and it's come out exactly from that wall. So that's really important. If you think about a lot of the things that you need to make for interiors, they're not all going to be coming from the ground plane. When you go to set, yeah, okay, so back to here. So when I go to extrusion, then you go to set up here. Yeah. Set, and then choose the pick a plane option that comes up. Okay, so that's extrusion. And to work with the others, you need to understand planes. And in fact, to be able to design anything really beyond very basic design forms, you need to understand the importance of working in different planes, because you're designing in 3D spaces. So going into the plan view, what I really want to make is a column type shape, but one that's curving and doing a bit more than a normal column. And I want to have this as a feature in the entry. I'm going to make a kind of series of workshop spaces on this level, but I do want to have a nice sort of entry feature there that might be also used as a bit of a storage unit. And so I'm going to use a Revolve for that. I might also show you blends, but just want to make sure you've got a good idea about how to use the Revolve tool. So have you used Revolve before to make anything? No, okay, right. Yeah.
No, I tried to.
Yeah. Yeah, so the key to it is knowing how the planes work, because you need to work in different planes. So here, I want my column object to sit about there. And it's going to be a circular object. And so to make it there, I need to have a plane defined. With Revolve normally, if I just make it in the ground floor plan, it's going to, well, I'll show you. Okay, if I make a Revolve here, I'm just going to draw something just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to make. So it's this sort of shape I'm trying to make, a bit nicer than what I'm drawing, but just doing it quickly. That's the sort of shape I want to revolve, so it's sort of a spindle shape that I'm making. And then I need to give an axis line. And so it's going to revolve this shape here around that blue axis line. But it's doing it in the ground plane, so it's sitting flat on the ground. And I don't want that. I want it to be, you know, like a column. Okay, so I don't want it to sit flat on the ground, I want it to come up from the ground. And so again, I just can't do that without setting up my planes first. So you need to have an understanding of planes before using really any of these tools except for extrusion and blend. So with the reference plane tool, I'm going to just draw a reference plane where I want it to go. So I want it to go just near the entry. Like I said, it's a feature for the entry. Let's move that over a bit. And to make my life easier, I'm going to give it a name. So remember, this is actually a really important feature that they give you in Revit, the ability to name reference planes. 2017, you'll see you can make them different colours as well. But the main thing is that you can give them names, and I'm just going to call this spindle column plane, so I know what it is. And you'll see when you name a reference plane, you will see the name come up when you select it. Now when I go to my 3D view, I can't see the plane. And that's one of the problems you'll have with reference planes. You can't see them in these 3D views, but you can select them. So now I'm going to go to Revolve, and then I can go to Set. Now, when I choose from this list, notice that reference plane's coming up there. So that's the key to selecting a reference plane. Once you've created it, you need to give it a name, or you can't select it from the list there. And now that I've selected it, I can actually use the Show tool and see that plane. Alright, so I could draw it there, or switch to my section view and draw it there. The plane's been set. If I go to Set here, you'll see it's still there, set in the list. So I'm going to draw my shape. Spend a bit more time getting it right. So I want to tape it out actually. Okay, so that's the shape I want, and as always with a revolve, you need to draw an axis line, and it's going to revolve this shape 360 degrees around the axis. The axis doesn't need to be any particular length; it just needs to be in line with the axis you want. Yeah, so you can send revolves a full 360, or you can use a lesser angle than that. So I can make it 180, and then it will just be a half circle. So I might show you that. Let's make this 180, and then you'll see when I click the tick, it's going to revolve it just halfway around. So that one. Oh, in section. So here I was in section view. Oh, you could. So if I go to my south elevation, then I can go to wireframe, and I'll see it, and I can edit them there. So you can do that, but even if you are working in those views, you need to set a plane. Right, because it won't automatically choose one for you. So I'll go back with it in this elevation view. I can just choose Edit Revolve, and I can see there the profile and the axis again, and also in the 3D view. In a perspective view, it gets a bit unwieldy. You can do some things in perspective, but it's a little bit harder. But in those non-perspective 3D views, which you're hopefully beginning to use a bit more, it's usually the easiest. Once you get experienced with 3D modelling and become more used to these solid modelling tools, that's probably the view you use more than any of the others. I do most of my modelling in these views rather than the section or plan views or anything like that. So again, I'm just going to click tick to finish. And that could be useful if this was up against the wall, having it just 180 degrees. But I want to go full circle, so I'm going to make it 360 degrees. Okay, so like I said, I want that to maybe also function as a storage unit. So in plan now, there's nothing to stop me going and making, for example, just a void. Maybe just avoid extrusion, and I'll create a rectangular shape in plan, and I'll set an extrusion start height of, let's say, 500, and then a top of maybe 900. Tick to finish. I just want to show you that in 3D. I can see that void there, but if I deselect it, I'll just see the results. I'll see what it does. And so you just need to know then how to select that if you want to modify it again. And the key is to find what the void creates. So the void is creating these surfaces here on the inside. So I can select any of those surfaces and that will select the void. Okay, so I can adjust that fairly easily in this view. So behind there we can have some storage. Okay, so then maybe to just take it a little bit further. So I've looked at Revolve, and now maybe I want to have a bench that is going to take that form and follow it around somewhere else. Right, so I'm going to use the sweep tool. Now, sweep also uses the idea of planes, but in some ways it's a bit easier. You need to understand planes, but it does do a lot of the setup for you. Okay, so I'll just go to sweep. So have any of you tried using the sweep tool before? No? Okay, sweeps are fairly easy compared to revolves. Well, not easy, but they're less work than revolves, because it'll set the planes up for you. You just need to know what to look for. So with a revolve, you have a profile, a shape that's getting turned around the axis. With a sweep, you have a profile as well, but it's following a path. So I'm just going to go here to sketch path. So all I've done is click on the sweep tool, and now go to sketch path. And I'm going to then draw over the shape I've already drawn using the arc tool. So like I said, I wanted to follow that that shape initially, and then I'm going to draw another arc up here. I'm just going to keep it fairly simple. Maybe I'll shorten that arc a bit. Okay, so I've got a very simple path there. But notice it's put this this marker on the first shape that I created. And that's really the key element when you're making a sweep. You've got to keep an eye out for that plane. I'll go into the 3D view so you can see it, the section box view. So notice that is actually a plane, not just a line. And that's the plane where you need to make your profile. So here it's actually much easier to work in this 3D view rather than trying to do it in this section or elevation view. So I'm just orbiting to get a good view of that. And now I'm going to draw going to finish that path. So I've done my path, and now I want to draw the shape that's going to follow that path. So think of it like a gutter. If you ever saw the Alcan trucks coming out to make gutters on site for anywhere where you've seen gutters done, they just extrude the guttering out, and then they can make it turn around and follow different directions. It's the same idea. So once you've done the path, you'll have the option to either select profile, or probably at first you want to just draw them, and to do that you go to edit profile. If you see that button's grayed out like there, just click on select profile and that'll bring it up again. Right, so now I'm going to draw a line and bring that straight up, and then, well, actually I'll draw it coming across and I'll show you how to round it. I was going to draw an arc there, but I'll show you an easier way. So I'm going to just draw this straight across, and then down and back. And you're probably thinking, well, why am I doing all of this to extrude a rectangle, when you might be thinking that you could extrude it from the ground. And if you're thinking that way, you're actually spot on, because you could. The reason I'm doing it like this is because I want to have that front corner rounded so it looks more like a real seat. So I'm going to use the fillet arc tool to do that. So here you've got fillet arc. So do you know about filleting in Revit compared to AutoCAD? So yeah, hopefully you know about that fillet arc tool. I can choose these two lines and then place my curve in between. That curve's probably a bit too much, so I'm going to take that back to 80. Okay, so tick to finish. That finishes the profile. Tick to finish again, and that will extrude the shape along my path. Now, I might think, well, I actually want that to wrap around more of the base of the column there. So I'm going to select it, and then back to Edit Sweep. I can then go to Sketch Path, and then extend that path around. Or maybe we'll go even further. So tick to finish again. That finishes the path, and then I'm going to finish again to finish the sweep. And there we are. Now I might think, well, I actually want that to be set out from the column a little bit more. Not a problem. Again, you can select that sweep, Edit Sweep, Sketch Path, and maybe I'll use one of these tools like Offset, and I'll just turn the copy option off and put in my distance. So I'll make that, say, 300. Right, and I can offset that path, and notice the profile plane goes with it. So when I click tick, you'll see my profile's moved out with the path. Tick again, and that's gone out. And so it's starting to work, but then I can see, well, there's a gap there between the back of my profile and the column. So I can go back now and edit the profile. Select profile, edit profile. There's my profile shape, and I'm just going to use the arrow key once I select that line and nudge that a bit to the left so it's inside the column. Tick to finish the profile, tick to finish again to finish the sweep, and now I can see it's intersecting the column. And so the last thing I just wanted to show you there is that I can use join and choose that Revolve and the sweep and make them blend as one object, so we get a line between them. Okay, so hopefully I'll give you some ideas about those modelling tools. And so the only one I haven't shown you there is blend, but I showed you that earlier. That's one of the easier ones to use. It's just two shapes on the ground. Yeah, it's really good. You can do a lot of good things with that. And I wouldn't worry too much about swept blend. They're a bit painful and not really all that useful. But remember, you can make voids with any of those things as well, and so you can combine as many solids and voids together using cut and join. So here you've got cut and join, so you can combine as many of those things as you like, and that's how you make complex assemblies and build up complex constructions and designs that you need to make. So I'll finish that one there. And you'll see then that is an in-place family. So all of those solids together, we've got the two solids and then the void as well. They make one in-place family. And if I select any of it, it'll select the whole thing. And the other solids over there as well, because they're all one. Now, it may not make sense to have them all together. So if I go edit in place, say I want this one to be separate, I'll show you a couple of tricks. What you can use is copy to clipboard. Now I'm going to finish my model, back to architecture, back to model in place, and I'll use the same category, casework, and then I can go on to modify, down to paste, and then unfortunately you're not going to get the option aligned to same place. I think you should, because that's really what I'm trying to do here, but it just doesn't bring that up for you. So what you need to do is choose align to selected levels, and then just choose ground floor usually, because that's where it's coming from. So you can see it's pasted it in exactly the same place. And you might think, well, what's the point of all of that? It's so that I can now finish this one, select my original family, edit in place, delete it from here, tick to finish, finish model, And now I've got this in-place family and then another one with just that cylinder. So it's good to think about how you can group those things together and group them logically so that you have things that are all meant to be one element grouped together. And so this thing on the wall probably also wouldn't make sense to have grouped with these other things. So you can separate things that way. You can also combine things together that way. And what I see too often is people, when they need to make a new extrusion or a new anything, going each time to model in place and making a whole bunch of separate in-place families. And if you're doing that, you're just creating work for yourselves. Because what you'll find is if you need to assign materials, you've got to select each one, then go to, well, let's do this one. You've got to go select it, edit in place, then select the object, and over here you'll find the material. So I'll show you what will happen if you do it the wrong way. Say this is a seat, a timber seat or something, just a timber bench. If I copy that now, remember I'm copying this at the top level, so I'm copying the whole family. And I may just want to have 3 identical benches like this. And then I might realise, well, I haven't assigned the material yet. So I've got to select each one, go to edit in place, then select the cylinder, over here, assign the material. And just get used to this. The first time you open the material editor, it can sometimes just take a minute to load the render module. It'll get there in a second. So it's not frozen. Well, it is frozen, but it's not going to crash. It will normally, here we go, come up. And so I'll just choose a timber. That'll do. Okay, so I've assigned that material. If we go to realistic, we'll see that a bit better. Okay, so I've got a timber there. But now to assign to these others, I've got a finished model. Select this one, edit in place, select the cylinder, click over here, select it, finish model, and just keep going like that. So that's pretty tedious. So the quick and dirty way of getting around that is to go to edit in place and then copy. So now remember I'm working inside the family. So I might actually make this a bit smaller because I just can't, it's a bit too big. So I'm going to, while I'm at it, just fix that. Okay, so inside the family, I can copy. Let's do a few of those. Finish model. So now, if I need to change the material, they're all one family. So I can just select them, edit in place, and then I can just do a window around all of them and change the material. So that saves a bit of time. Say if you're doing a screen or something with a lot of battens or posts or something like that, timber panelling, you often need to do this way, then that's a quick and dirty way of doing it. It's a bit rough though, and there's a much better way. The better way, if you know you've got a lot of identical objects in your projects, instead of doing it with an in-place family, in other words going to model in place, the better option by far is to manage it in its own file by going to big R, new, and then family. So, remember I used casework, so I'm going to use that. Metric casework. And I'll just bring that list up again. So if I go again, new, family, notice how you have a template for nearly all of the categories that you have in Revit. So you've got the metric door, metric column, metric window, which I'm going to spend a bit of time on later on today. Okay, so we've got a separate file now, but notice we've got the same tools as you have when you go to model in place. Okay, so I think I've shown you, have I shown you profile families? Thought I'd shown you them briefly. Yeah. So they're 2D, so you won't always have these 3D tools. Some families don't need 3D objects. So if you choose a template like metric profile, you may only have, for example, the line tool, really. They're the same. Voids can be extrusions, or extrusions can be voids or solids. So solids are physical solid things, and voids take away from them. Yes, oh yes, so you can have one extrusion that's solid and another one that's a void. Yeah. And I'll do that right now. So I'm going to make an extrusion just like the one I made. Now we've got this width and depth here. If you don't need it, don't use it. So I'm going to ignore those and just draw a circle. Want to have 500 as my radius before. And tick to finish. Have a look in the 3D view. Have you seen this happen before when you open up a new family or go to make a family and you open the 3D view and there's nothing there? Yeah. What would you think you could do to find it? Right click? Yeah? Or? Zoom to fit. Going to fit everything in the drawing space into that view. So orbiting, and there we are. So it's a problem. Most of those families, they're zoomed into some strange area. You just have to do that when you first make them. So there's my extrusion. The height is, I don't know, the default 250. So I'll make that a bit more, 400 or something. Okay, so then I'm going to just give you a bit of an intro into parameters. We'll do a lot more on it later. So for interior projects, this is a parameter you will need to make continually. You'll need to assign material parameters, because for interior design a lot of the work is specifying materials, and you'll often have repeated elements in your designs where you need to control the materials, and often the only difference between these objects is going to be the material. They'll be the same shape, but then you might have some of them that are different colours or different finishes altogether. So this little, it's basically a circular seat I'm trying to make, a very simple one, I know, but that's what it is. I want to have the ability to make different colours using the same family. So I'll start over here. It's got the material. Now make sure you realise you need to select the solid to see the material. So there, I've selected my extrusion. Maybe just so that it's, I'll do the void up. So I'll just assign the material. I'll put a void in afterwards, cutting away the inside. So here I've got by category. Don't worry too much about it. If you don't know what by category means, don't worry too much. It just means there's no material assigned yet. So I'm going to click into that area, and then the little button that pops up is the browse button. And notice you don't have your full list of materials. That's because this is a new file. So it's up here. You can see family 1. We'll give it a better name in a second. So the list of materials you're probably used to seeing there is in your project file. Do you know about this panel down the bottom to make new materials? Yeah, so make sure you know about that one. It saves you a lot of time when you're working in families to just quickly make a material from there. So I want to have a wood material as the default. So you've got wood materials down here. Don't really care which one, that'll do, wood. So when you select it, the up arrow puts it into your file. So I've set the material wood. The appearance, that's good enough, but I might make the graphics a bit nicer and make the colour there more like wood. Done. So I'm going to click OK. And if I go to shaded, I can see that. So that's assigned the default material. It means when I load it into the project, in fact maybe I'll do that, because you'll see this happen all the time when you make your own families and also when you get them from other people. So I'm going to go to Save As and save it into my own folder. And we'll call this circular seat. Okay, so nothing special at the moment. It's just a cylinder with the material. So So I'm going to go to loading the project, tick the file that I've been working in, click OK. And normally this would be instant. It's just taking a second because I'm recording, I think. There we are. Okay, so now I can place these easily. So we'll get rid of the old one. The new one's much better. But you'll see this happen when you get files from other people as well. If I look in properties there's no material property. If I go to edit type, still no material. Well, there is. That's a preset one that I haven't used. So just pretend there's no material there because this wouldn't do anything. So what do I need to do if I want to change the material? Well, yeah, no, well, yeah, okay, edit type, duplicate. I'll do that. Still, no material. What you would do if it was in place family is right, you go edit and place, but it's because I've made it in a separate file, instead I go to edit family. That will take me back to the file that it's come from. And so this will work with any family. If you get a family from someone else or that you download from the internet and there's no material option, this is what you have to do. Now I want to make it so I can adjust it in the project. And this, like I was saying, is a brief intro to parameters. And you'll find that over here, the button at the end that you may have clicked on by mistake and wondered what it was for, is to assign a parameter. It's not to assign a material. So here's material, there's the material I've assigned, and then at the end is that grey button which associates a parameter. Okay, so parameters are nothing complicated. All they are is an ability to adjust a setting to a value. So you just need to click on add parameter, and I'm going to call mine seat material. And that's it. It's that easy to add a parameter. So really all you're doing is clicking add parameter and giving a name that you'll remember. Sorry? Yeah, I'll do a bookcase, yeah, no problem. Yep. Okay, so I'll click OK. Now if I go loading the project, I'll show you the difference. So here you'll get a couple of options. If you're not sure which option to use, usually the one at the top is going to work better for you. So nothing's changed, but if I select one of these and now go to edit type, what do you know? There's a parameter I can use to adjust the material. And so this is how most of the families you'll use will already be set up, but not necessarily. So you just need to check that. So if I can go here and I'll choose a different material. Okay, so they've all changed, and that's because it's a type property. So I've gone into edit type and changed the material. Now what would you do if you want them to be different materials? So it's something that someone said before. Yeah, edit type. And then what do you do when you want to make changes normally? Duplicate, that's right. So you could go to duplicate here and say circular seat red. And then, no, it's a new type. So this is the family up here, and then these are the types. So the types could be all different materials. So here I can say, right, I've got a red, and I'll make a red material. So finish red. And we'll just get a red material. Okay, so that one's red, the others are still the original colour. Alright, so that's, at first probably that's enough for parameters. There are other ways of making things set up to have different materials, but that should be enough to get you started. So yeah, I'll do a bookcase just to maybe do another example with the same thing. Okay, so pretty simple. Again, new family, and I would use casework again. So a bookcase could probably be made mostly with extrusions. So for the outer shell anyway, you could use extrusions. In fact, I'll draw a rectangle for the back. Now here, what I'll do is align to these reference planes. So here I'm just going to choose those two sides and line them up exactly with the reference planes. And I might actually, so I should have locked those as well. So I'll just show you maybe a bit more slowly. Do that again. So when you're using the align tool, you choose the thing you want to line it up with first, and then what you want to align or move. And what you should get then is a lock symbol. So I'll do that on the other end. So here, let's just line those up. Okay, so I'll just finish that so you can see what that's doing. These reference planes, remember, set the width. So if I drag those planes out, notice how the object's moving with it. It's not going to let me move them because they're tied to something else. But I just want to show you that those sides are set to my width. Now, we'll do more on this later, but just to show you how to get in to see these parameters without loading it into a project, you can go to family types. So it's up here in the, it's actually on the create or the modify panel. You'll see that properties area. And you have this button here, family types, and there you can see my three main parameters, depth, height and width. So the bookshelf, maybe 900 is a pretty standard size, but I might just make it 1200 just so you can see the change. So I can click apply, and then I can see that change straight away. So now bookshelves these days, you can be a bit more creative with the design, but I might just keep it simple and put in some straightforward sides there. So I'm going to make a extrusion there for each side. Just use a rectangle again, and we'll set a again a rectangle using a line. I can line these edges up. So there I'm going to set the depth, even though I won't make it that deep in the end. I'm just going to choose that reference plane and then my line. Now, I've lined this edge up with the reference plane on the left. So think about what would happen if I moved this plane now. What's going to happen to this edge? Yeah, probably, yeah. So it may get moved. In some cases they'll have other ways of moving things, but yeah, it's good to think about how it's being defined. So the other three sides I've locked to something because there's something I can lock them to, but this one doesn't have anything. So what you need to do there is draw a dimension from the reference plane to that line. Just place it down here, and then what I'm going to do is select that line, set the measurement I want, 20 mil, and then I'll select the dimension and lock it. So that way, that line is fixed 20 mil from this reference plane wherever it goes. So that needs to be the thought process you use when you start setting up and working with parameters. Parameters that work with measurements like this. So I'll finish that side, and then I can do the same on the other side, create another extrusion. Now, you can see there, as I've made the rectangle, that I get the lock symbol coming up automatically. So I didn't show you that before because it's good to see how to align things when you don't get those, but in some cases it'll just come up and you can easily just lock them as you go. And so then I'll just, again, draw in my dimension, select my line, change the measurement, and then select the dimension and lock it. Finish, and now let's have a look in 3D. Doesn't look like much, but that's the basis for my shelves. You'll see there's not much more work to go now. Going to go into the family types again. So remember that button, really important when you're working in families. And my depth. Remember I said that's too much, so I'm going to make that, say, 450. Apply, and they go with it. So that's working. But what about the height? That's obviously not high enough for a bookshelf. So we go to the front view, and again, zoom to fit. And I'm going to select those extrusions and stretch using the arrow there to make it line up with the reference plane that's already set up there to establish the height. So now, again, once you get a bit of practice doing this, it's easier than it probably seems. So now again, back to my 3D view, and I can set the height there to a different value. So how high do you think a bookshelf might be normally? Yeah, 1800 is not a bad height actually. So that'll get it under a doorway. They can even be higher. I mean, I've got some that are higher than all the doors in my house. They're a real pain, but they're good for putting stuff on, but painful when we've got to move. So, but they can be that high. So this is adjustable. So now I can go and start modelling shelves inside that. Now I'm not going to show you too much about changing all of the settings to put in different numbers of shelves. I'll just show you how to get some even spacings between your shelves. Okay, so I'll go back into plan view. Right, so because I've done all of that work setting up these other elements, one thing I haven't done, sorry, is set the depth of this one. So I better go edit extrusion and then draw in a dimension. Remember, we haven't done this. Lock that one just like I did for the sides. So now I can simply make an extrusion using a rectangle that goes inside all those elements. And as long as I lock all the sides, they should automatically follow the carcass that I've done. So I know it can seem like a lot of work setting it up like that, but once you do that setup, it should make everything else much easier. Now the height, I'm going to set manually over here to 20 mil. Actually, so we'll make that start 100 off the ground, and then we'll set the height to 120. And then going to the front elevation, I'll just show you one last thing. Actually, you don't want to go too far with this, but with the extrusions you make, if you try to copy them, you might see this happen. So you may have already come across this when you try to copy up and down. So notice if I select this one and then copy, click to give a base point, and I can't go up or down. You seen that one? It's a common thing with solids. Even if you turn constrain off, then it might still happen there, constraint is the main issue, so it's letting me copy up and down now. So that's working. But notice it still says extrusion start 100, extrusion end 120, so it's not measuring from the ground anymore. And I'll show you really what the problem is. If you select the solid, you'll see it has this option here, dissociate work plane. Yeah, so if you click on that, then you can copy in any direction always, even if turning this one off doesn't fix it. Okay, so what I can do now is use the array tool and then just take it from the top shelf there, setting it to the last option here, and then going from the top up to the top of the very top of the shelves, and we'll set I don't know, 7, oh let's try 6 shelves. There we go. Now what I'm going to check, because I just did that in a quick and dirty way, the width, if I change that to 700, yeah. Okay, so I need to go and lock each of those the same way I did the first one. So we'll look at how you do that later, but that's probably enough for now to get you started. So I wouldn't do that. I'll do the window family first, because then I can go through parameters and everything else properly. But we'll just save this as wooden shelf. Oops, wooden. Okay, so maybe I'll just ask you, if you have an idea, what do you think might be a good way of getting those shelves to adjust as a group, rather than needing to go and adjust each one manually, which is what I would have to do if I do it in this file. Yeah, you could. Yeah, so I can, that's fine. That's how I can adjust them manually. Yeah, but have you ever worked with blocks in AutoCAD that have blocks inside them? So blocks within blocks, or nested blocks. You might have come across those. So maybe you might have come across, say, a window family that had a window block, that had a block for maybe an arrow inside that block. Right, so you can have blocks within blocks in AutoCAD. You can have the same thing in Revit. So to make this the correct way would be to make another family for that individual shelf, because it's a repeated item. The way you should be thinking is, whenever you have a repeated item, make a new family for it. That's really the whole point of using families. I know it seems like extra work at first, but it will save you work in the long run. And as designers, that's really the key to producing complex designs, having repeated elements that you can easily manage. And so by making this shelf into its own family, then I can give it its own properties of width, depth and height. And then when I bring it into this family, all I need to do is plug those parameters into the shelf's parameters of width, depth and height, which I'll show you later. But that's going to be the thought process. So anyhow, we'll get into nested families fairly soon, hopefully. But like I said, that should be plenty for now to get started. And so I'll just load this into the project just to finish it off, and you'll see, even though it's far from perfect, it's a good starting point. So there are my shelves, and as I refine this, I can have this shelf unit copied as many times as I want to in the project. And unlike something that's been made using model in place, if I fix it and make it better later, which I'm sure I would, all I need to do is go to the family file, fix it there, and then when I load that back in, it's going to fix all of my shelves in one hit. And that's really the key to working with things in Revit. Now, I don't know why everything's gone red there. Oh yes, because I changed finish. Okay, sorry. Well, I better show you that. That's the stupid thing I did. So I better show you how to fix that. And that's a common thing. You'll probably see this happen when you do it. So here, notice how I finish. I didn't even think about it. I duplicated that to make finish red. And what I forgot to do was duplicate the appearance. So I should have done that. So to fix it, I'm not just going to go to finish and fix it. I'm going to go to finish red and duplicate the material there, duplicate the appearance, and then go back to finish and then fix it, make it back to white. So does that make sense? You can tell because here, notice how finish has linen white, which has 3 materials using that appearance. You can see there. Whereas finish red now, because I duplicated the appearance, only has that material. So 0 there, that means it's the only one using it. Don't worry about the names. If you want to change the names there, you can. But I'm just going to leave it as linen white, even though it's red. Doesn't matter. There we go, and that's fixed it. So anyhow, that should be plenty to get you started with modelling.